Go? All right, well, welcome everybody to the Thursday, March 6th, 2025 Town of Webster Board Meeting. We will open with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Deneen, can you do roll, please?
Supervisor Flaherty.
Here.
Councilman Cahill.
Here.
Councilwoman Wynn.
Here.
Councilwoman Wright. Here. Attorney to the town Taylor.
Here. All righty. We're going to switch up a little bit here tonight. We're going to do the minutes to be considered for approval first. 2 weeks ago, we had a workshop. Actually, we started the workshop at 7 p.m. instead of 6:30 because we had one agenda item that evening, and actually it went for 40 minutes, if I remember, Kyle. And it was robust. It was presented by Pat Stevens, our highway superintendent. We had 4 members of the board in attendance. Unfortunately, Councilman Cahill was not able to attend. There was a nice PowerPoint presentation, a lot of robust question and answers that came from the board. So that workshop, I have reviewed those minutes, and I make a motion that we approve them.
Second.
Supervisor Flaherty.
Aye.
Councilwoman Wynn.
Aye.
Councilman Cahill.
Abstain.
Councilwoman Wright. Aye.
And I will say, I spoke to Councilman Cahill earlier this week, and he said he did either watch the video from that workshop and that town board meeting, so he saw all of what we experienced live that night. I also went over the February 20th regular town board meeting minutes. I make a motion that we approve those.
Second. Supervisor Flaherty.
Aye.
Councilwoman Wright. Aye. Councilman Cahill.
Abstain.
Councilwoman Wynn.
Aye.
Okay, so we have the open to the floor where each speaker will be allowed to speak on anything that they would like for 5 minutes. And our first speaker is Dave Malecki. Oh, I thought it was going to be a check. Darn it.
That's for me. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Dave Malecki from West Webster, and I'm talking about the IBOB Bridge, the Irondequoit Bay Outlet Bridge. Bridge it 24/7, 365. Anybody got any questions? Okay, so you know what I want. Thanks.
Oh, come on, Dave. That's 5 seconds.
Well, we've got an important speaker coming next.
Well, we.
So do you have any questions? Seriously, I mean, you know what I want, right? I want to be able to bike across there anytime.
I called Blair, the person who is responsible for that bridge, and his voice message is not up to date, and he never called me back, and I need to call him again, because I've been told from a friend that for some reason, under the new administration, people are more responsive. So I will try again.
Cool.
My thought, for what it's worth, for all it's worth, is we're not going to get a bridge anytime soon, because it'll be a gazillion dollars and an act of God. But if there's anything that they can do to have it, whatever, open or close later, open earlier, whatever it is, just be available to cross longer. How's that?
That helps a lot.
That was the nature of my question to Blair, whatever, O'Neill, I think his name is Blair O'Neill.
Right.
And I will call him again. And I would suggest that you call him and email him as well. I think you had called him before and expressed that concern, which gave the town board a whole lot more information than anybody ever had on the history of the bridge. So if it works, that would be fantastic.
Thanks. Yeah, as we mentioned, I gave you his name there, and I appreciate all your efforts. I've said that here before, and I'll say it again. What I'm really looking forward for is 24/7, 365. So it doesn't get me all the way there, but it certainly is a step in the right direction. Thank you.
Good seeing you, Dave.
And I've never talked to the gentleman, all I've done is emailed him. And I found him very responsive, but that was, well over a year ago, so, thank you.
Thanks, Dave. I'm a little nervous that the next speaker, I wonder if he was watching 2 weeks ago, because I think I name dropped him 3 times during the workshop, Pat, because Barry Dean, who's getting up next, 50 years in the employment of the town, highway department superintendent, town board member. I know that as the new highway garage was going up, Barry was met with Pat on a couple of different occasions, and one of them a couple months ago was regarding the new salt barn and new wash building. And Barry, I don't want to put words in your mouth. You were a little skeptical. You went over, you talked to Pat. I got a call from you. You said, yeah, I think you got to do this based on where we're at. So I dropped your name on that 2 weeks ago. So I hope that you're not here to get me in trouble.
We'll see.
Okay, you're up.
Hi, good evening. My name is Barry Dean. I'm a retired highway superintendent for the town of Webster. I'm here in support of the action to build a new salt barn and a new wash rack. My reason for that being that originally, from what I'm told, the original bond for the new highway garage was around $28 million. Bids came in real low, real well. It's on time, under budget, and because of that, there's monies available to complete the project as originally proposed. Those items were cut out of the original proposal. They thought for cost savings measures. We have a salt barn that's it's got to be 45 years of age, I believe. Pat, do you know what year it was? 45. It was an interesting time. Joan Fellow worked with Cliff Jones to get that passed by the town board that many years ago, and we have a salt barn that has worked well for us. It's in dire need of replacement. It's been kept up over the years. It's been repaired. It's been everything we could possibly do to extend its life has been done. It's at its end of life. So my question to this board is, if not now, when? When would be the appropriate time to do it? And if we don't do it now, we're going to have to go through this all over again a year or two down the road. So I wholly support this. I think it's money well spent. Webster has had a history of putting off infrastructure improvement because of cost, and it eventually comes back and gets you. I wholly support this, and I would hope that all the town board members would as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Barry.
Thanks, Barry.
So as we go to this next resolution, I don't want to be redundant to a 40-minute workshop that was done 2 weeks ago. But Pat, as you get up to answer any questions that the board may have before we do this resolution, I think the MRB as being the design entity for this, a service provider, we went with MRB and we want to do this now because the people are on site and there are some efficiencies of if we get this going now, while some of that stuff is still on site, that it would potentially have the lower bids when we get to the bid process. This is not the bid process, it's the design. MRB was picked to do this because they were the ones who did the out in Buffalo. Clarence, thank you. And Councilman Bill Abbott did a wonderful job with Pat Stevens back in the 22-23 timeframe We went with MRB because this is their bailiwick. They have done other garages, highway facilities, and I think it has worked out very well. And they are the obvious choice. I don't think we went out and said, let's go and ask 3 or 4 or 5 or put out to bid on MRB's services, because they have been working on this project hand in hand with Campus Construction Management. It was the obvious choice. I don't know if we got into a deep dive of that 2 weeks ago when you were presenting. I know your presentation showed that we were gonna cascade into tonight and start the process. And the only way you can start the process on a municipal project of the wash building and the salt barn is to start with the design, so that we can move along to putting out bids for the low bid from the actual contractor. So, with that being said, before we do the, and I can't do this motion because it's authorizing me to sign this, do the board members have any questions of Pat or anybody, Paul, on this, as far as it's a service and why we went with MRB?
I don't have any questions. I just, have a couple comments, and want to thank you, Pat, for giving me the tour today. The highway project, the garage, is what a phenomenal project. Everybody that has been joined to complete that project has done a fantastic job, from the finishers to the construction guys, the steel framers. I was really, really impressed. And one of the things, Barry, that I did want to take a look at was a salt barn, and Pat educated me as to when it was built, the current condition of it. I think the last time we did some work on that was to put the metal roof on it, and I believe that was back in 1990. And to your point also, Barry, with respect to not really keeping up with these buildings and the sewage treatment plant, and has brought us to where we are today, where we're expending massive amounts of money, in my opinion, because there wasn't enough forethought and money put away in reserves. Now, as to the salt barn itself, I'm on the same page as you, Barry, and Pat, and probably the other board members here, that we definitely need to move forward with this project, in my opinion, based upon, my visiting and speaking to Pat and input from Barry. It's a worthwhile project. We really need to do it. And Barry's point that he said, you've got all the construction crews there right now, and there's this thing called mobilization. So if we don't do this now, there will be a mobilization charge to bring them back. So I'm for this, for sure, in favor of it.
Was this designed before? When it was initially planned in scope, was it designed before? And is this like to refresh the design, or?
Great question. That was actually the one thing I wanted to talk about. Tom got into a little bit about the selection of MRB. The major factor of this is, given it was in the original scope, the salt barn design itself, it already was brought to 95% by MRB. So there's only a 5% initial design left. The rest is construction documents, and then the wash bay that wasn't done in the original design. So that was the major factor, was sticking with MRB and not doing a lot. That the concept that somebody would be able to come in and start from scratch with the same efficiency that MRB, who already went to 95% with a schematic design, isn't really feasible. So because this was included in the original scope, as Barry mentioned and a few other people, and only cut out to make sure we were on our budget, didn't have problems when it came to awarding bids, the majority of the initial design is complete. So this is completing that design, getting construction level documents. So they're at design, they need to be brought to construction, and then the actual package, the specifications and things of that nature needed to be developed, and the wash bay structure needs to be incorporated into that. And that's what this scope of services from MRB does, all the way through the end of bidding. So they finish the design now, they support us with the bid documents, we get the bids, and that's where this scope that we're talking about here tonight ends.
And if you started from scratch, how much more would it cost for the extra fees and the mobilization and starting all of the design from scratch?
I don't know if we broke that out. The initial professional services contract was for all of the facility upgrades, which included the salt barn in the larger lump sum. So I'd just be speculating to break that out exactly, but if you just went by scale, you know, this is 118,000. The majority of the design, 95% is done. So if this is the last 25% between construction documents, you could say significantly more than double.
Jenny, any questions or comments?
I'm gonna wait until for the vote, then I will
Oh,
give my,
well, like I said, I can't make the motion, so.
I will make the motion to authorize the supervisor to sign a contract approving MRB Group for the site and building design for the highway salt barn, truck wash building, not to exceed $118,500.
Second.
Councilwoman Wright,
Aye.
Councilman Cahill,
Aye.
Supervisor Flaherty,
Aye.
Councilwoman Wynn.
first of all, I would like to thank Pat for, all your dedication and all your, the town and everything that you've done. And you went under, the cost of the estimation. A matter of fact is because of the inflation and material costs and everything else that we are gonna be incur. And, even though we are under $6 million, right now, like I said, potentially there's grants out there. I would like to see if we can possibly try to get some grants. I know that there are a web seminar coming up on March 12th, and maybe we can try to see if we can, apply for that. And also too, that does mean that, we save money, and now we're gonna go out and try to spend more money, for the town. And I'm hesitant, and at this time, I don't think that I'd be able to vote yes on this because of that issues. I would like to see if we can have some grants, to coming for it and stuff like that. So this way it would help lower the cost, for us, for our town, because of the debts we are in right now. So my vote would be nay.
Okay. Thank you, Jenny. Okay, getting back to the original sequence, John Cahill, you did the bills this week.
Yes, I did, and I found everything to be in order, so I would move that we pay the bills as submitted by the Director of Finance.
Second?
Councilman Cahill,
Aye.
Councilwoman Wynn,
Aye.
Supervisor Flaherty,
Aye.
Councilwoman Wright.
Aye.
I reviewed the prepaid warrants as submitted by Paul Adams, the Director of Finance, and make a motion we approve those.
Second.
Supervisor Flaherty,
Aye.
Councilwoman Wright,
Aye.
Councilman Cahill,
Aye.
Councilwoman Wynn.
Aye.
And I reviewed the in writing paper purchase orders.
To hopefully soon be electronic someday.
Yay.
As submitted by Paul Adams, the Director of Finance, and make a motion that we approve them.
Second.
Supervisor Flaherty,
Aye.
Councilwoman Wright,
Aye.
Councilman Cahill,
Aye.
Councilwoman Wynn.
Aye.
So this is it, Paul, right before the auditors are in next week,
They're in next week.
and so you're buttoning it up.
We buttoned it up.
All right.
We think this is it for 2024 budget transfers. Only a handful that affect finance, police, highway, library, and parks. But I think there's only 5 transfers in total in very small dollar amounts.
Okay, any questions?
Nope.
Make a motion to approve the final 2024 budget transfers as presented by Paul Adams, the Director of Finance.
Second.
Supervisor Flaherty,
Aye.
Councilman Cahill,
Aye.
Councilwoman Wynn,
Aye.
Councilwoman Wright.
Aye.
And I think we talked about this 2 weeks ago, between our expenses in 2024 being, the actual being better than what we budgeted, and the revenues that we budgeted for 2024 actually being better and higher. The combination of those two, we did better on our budget by about $6 million, did we not, Paul?
And that's correct, Tom.
Yeah. for an entity that is about a $47 million budget of spending,
We're at about 47.
that's pretty darn good.
Pretty darn good.
Yep.
I agree.
Okay, Rick, would you mind coming up? And the gentleman coming up right now, this was quite the pickup by the town 4 years ago. Rick Canali is our chief plant operator at the soon-to-be wastewater recovery facility. Is that correct, Rick?
Yes, that's
It's
correct.
not a sewer treatment plant anymore.
Not yet.
And Rick's experience at the city of Rome and what they did with some technological advances with their sewer plant, turning it into a wastewater recovery, has really guided us the last 4 years on the project we're doing, so. But this next resolution, I didn't know if the board members had any questions that Rick could potentially answer for them.
If you just give us a brief purview of what this
Sure.
is involved.
So, headwork analysis is kind of multifaceted, and, it's kind of, the EPA kind of strongly encourages, and when they strongly encourage, that you should be doing headworks or local limit studies, every 10 years, and ours is about 15 years ago. But they also recommend that if you have new industry coming to town, or you're going through upgrades, or you're having violations, we check all those boxes,
Yeah.
along with them recommending it.
Yes, we do.
But really, it's the front line of defense for our facility to keep the integrity of our treatment process, because what they do is they come in, and the study will find out what constituents and pollutants are coming in. And then they will see what we can handle as a treatment facility. And then what happens is we back that out, and this is what we give. It's like a piece of the pie to the industries in the commercial, not domestic or, so they'll tell us what we can do. So we'll look at our permits, and what we do is only allow them so much, so we're not gonna have that in our final product, which actually will protect us to do our Class A fertilizer. We don't want a lot of metals or something coming in that'll affect that. So this is, it's needed and necessary and beneficial to the facility.
So, in that we've got Fairlife coming on within next year at some point, does it make sense to do that study after they're online or before?
Well, you know what, there's not so much concern with theirs, but we really look at like metal plating or stuff like that they're sending down
Gotcha.
copper and zinc and all those metals that can affect our biosolids. Fairlife will be treating down our sewer or limits anyway, so, they're not gonna be a big factor in that aspect, but it will allow us to know what we can dole out to them too, because we're in the process of their permit development.
Okay.
And so we got 3 quotes in. I think we sent it out to like 7 or 8 engineering companies. And the lowest bid was also, will get it back to us within 20 weeks. So they were the shortest time too, along with the best price.
Okay, thanks, Rick. I don't have any other questions.
Another one I can't do the resolution motion on.
So I would move to authorize the supervisor to sign a contract, no, wrong one. Sorry.
That's right.
No, it's this one right here, 5.
Number 5.
Yeah. So I'll move to authorize the supervisor to sign a contract to approve the sewer department to hire Barton and LeJudas, 443 Electronics Parkway, Liverpool, New York, to do a local limit study and upgrade development for the sum of $30,000.
Second?
Councilman Cahill,
Aye.
Councilwoman Nguyen,
Aye.
Supervisor Flaherty,
Aye.
Councilwoman Wright.
Aye.
You know, it's interesting, we have 3 resolutions left and then a presentation tonight from Leanne Kimber and potentially Kimberly Baptiste from Colliers. The next resolution actually somewhat falls into Colliers' purview because they are the company that is engaged by the Village of Webster. Is that correct? It's by the Village of Webster to do the BOA. And we found out in the last couple of days that this 30-day public comment period on this brownfield opportunity area because the town falls into about 10% of the geographical area, this BOA is basically really the Xerox campus. But some of it does, as you move toward the west, go into 250 and it's in the town. So we have to do a resolution, just like the village, for this 30-day comment period. For the public to say this plan that the village is doing. The village, correct me if I'm wrong, Kyle, they wrote the resolution, we kind of mimicked it. That's correct.
Don
White, the village attorney, has confirmed that we really don't have to do anything after this resolution. They will take it from there with Colliers and handle any of the comments coming in. They'll publish it in the newspaper. You were nice enough to give me the packet that's this thick. We'll have it here at Town Hall. I gotta give it to you, Deneen, just in case somebody does stop in. But we would point them to the website where it is at. So that's the best explanation I can give. This is a bit of a housekeeping item because the town is kind of a tag on to this. Does anybody have any questions before we do this?
No.
Okay. I make a motion to establish a 30-day public comment period on Brownfield Opportunity Area, the BOA, and publish in the March 19th Webster Herald.
Second. Supervisor Flaherty?
Aye?
Councilwoman Wright?
Aye.
Councilman Cahill?
Aye.
Councilwoman Wynn?
Aye.
Josh Artuzo and I met with a gentleman by the name of John Accorso a couple of weeks ago. He used to work in, I guess, the planning department of the city for many years. We were very impressed by him. He said, I'm retired, I'd like to do something for the town. We talked about the comprehensive plan and what he might be able to do. We went over some things. Lo and behold, we said, you know, we got an opening as an alternate on the Zoning Board of Appeals. He said, I'd be in. If you'll have me, I'd like to do it. We're having him, unless the board has any problems.
No problems.
All right, well then I make a motion to appoint John Corso as an alternate member of the Zoning Board of Appeals for the remainder of the vacant alternate term that expires on December 31st, 2025.
Second.
Supervisor Flaherty?
Aye?
Councilwoman Wynn?
Aye.
Councilman Cahill?
Aye.
Councilwoman Wright?
Aye.
And I guess for the time being, I am the liaison to community development, but that might be changing soon. So I am making a motion to approve the following item that can be sent to auction by the Community Development Department, the 2016 Ford Taurus, asset tag number 006551.
Second.
Supervisor Flaherty?
Aye?
Councilman Cahill?
Aye.
Councilman Wynn?
Aye.
Councilwoman Wright?
Aye.
Okay, the last item tonight is actually probably would have been better for a workshop, but it kind of came about in the last really 48 hours, I would say. So as Leanne and/or Kimberly make their way up to the podium to do this presentation, I've tried to keep the town board apprised of Empire State Development reaching out to me last week and saying that they may have a structure for funding through the Fast New York grant program, the roads on the Xerox campus for the purpose of getting them to the point where they meet village and town code, and then the town or village would take a dedication to them. We've been fighting this battle for years to get the money. And so I attended a meeting with Leanne on Tuesday at the village offices where 3 members of Empire State Development came and presented to us. When the meeting was over and I put my jaw back into place because I was somewhat shocked by what I heard, and I mean pleasantly shocked and surprised. Leanne and I pretty much knew at the end of that meeting that we need to shoehorn in a presentation tonight. Because if this is gonna happen the way they structured it, it'll happen fast. And so here's Leanne. She was gracious enough with a very young family to make time to come in at 8 o'clock. And Kimberly, you have a young family too. So I appreciate you doing this, and I'll hand the baton to you.
Sounds great. Thank you, Supervisor Flaherty. Good evening. Thank you all for having us in tonight to append to your meeting. My name's Leanne Kimber. I'm with Colliers Engineering and Design. About a month ago, we were engaged to serve as the support staff, for lack of a better word, to the Webster Economic Development Alliance. So that's the reason that I'm here with you tonight. So as Supervisor Flaherty mentioned, we were approached by Empire State Development, ESD. Last week, they called a meeting on March 4th with the town, the village, and WIDA to strongly encourage the town, the village, and WIDA, with WIDA as the lead applicant, to apply for a Fast New York Track C infrastructure grant in the amount of $9 million. The grant would include several roadway projects in and around the Xerox campus that would essentially unlock that site for potential redevelopment and investment in alignment with the Reimagine Webster Brownfield Opportunity Area Study, in alignment with the many conversations that the town, the village, and Xerox have been having over the years to position this site for reinvestment. So the map that's shown on the screen and that I think you all have in front of you gives a sense of the breadth of this area, the investment that's gone on to date, sewer infrastructure upgrades by the town, the Fairlife facility to the eastern part of this area. I'm not going to go into too many details. I think you all kind of understand the magnitude of this area and what potential it brings to the town, the village, and the region. But if you go to the second slide, that will kind of hone in on the project scope that's being considered for this application. So that would include improvement of Panama Road and Orchard Street, which are currently on the Xerox campus, but ultimately would be owned by the village. A multimodal trail along Phillips Road between Route 104 and the Parks and Recreation Department. An extension of Chiota Drive from its existing terminus to Route 250, which is currently owned by the town, I believe.
Yes.
Reconstruction of Mitchell Dean Drive between Phillips Road and Salt Road, and an extension of Bolter Industrial Parkway from its existing terminus to Salt Road. I think I got everything. Five roadway projects totaling $9 million. The grant would include that, and it would also include the nearly completed sewer infrastructure upgrades that the town is working on to the northeastern part of this area. So if you go to the table that you have in front of you, that kind of breaks down each of these components, who the jurisdiction would be ultimately after the land is dedicated by Xerox, and where the funding would come from. So the total project cost is about $15.6 million. Again, the request would be $9.3 million. Most of that money is coming from Fast New York. The village does have a $500,000 grant from HUD to apply to some of these roadways. And that, along with the town's previous sewer investment, would be used as a match for this grant. So typically this grant is a 90% fund with a 10% match. The town and village would be well exceeding that. So there wouldn't be additional match funding for the design and construction of this project. So how would this be structured? I mentioned WIDA at the beginning. Because this is a project that would span the town and the village, ESD sees WIDA as the most logical entity to serve as the lead applicant on this project. So WIDA would apply for the grant. WIDA would be the recipient of the grant and would administer the grant through to implementation. That means that WIDA, the town, and the village would enter into development agreements that would outline all of the stipulations for how all of that would work. Our goal at the end of tonight is to understand any of your questions or concerns, recognizing that we've only had 48 hours to process this. We have a lot of questions of our own, but really my goal is to understand what you need to know that we can go back and ask ESD to get answers to those questions, so that when we come back in 2 weeks at your next board meeting, you feel comfortable and confident to pass a resolution saying essentially that you'll make a good faith effort to enter into the development agreement with WIDA in order to give WIDA the authority to be the lead applicant on this grant. So that's our goal for tonight. Before we do questions, I have a couple more details I want to go through. So the first is, what is the cost of the town? I understand, or you understand from what I've already said, that the sewer investments you've already made well exceed the match that the town would have to put up in order to apply for this grant. The grant does cover design and construction costs. The things that it doesn't cover are a 1% commitment fee that would be committed from the town and the village, as well as a nominal application fee. I think it's like $250. And then ultimately, the cost for WIDA to administer the grant. So yes, WIDA has an executive director position that our firm is currently filling. The magnitude of managing this grant and all the reporting requirements and the documentation well exceeds that role. So it's anticipated that that would be an additional cost that would come from the town and the village through WIDA. Kind of talked about our next steps a little bit. This morning, the Webster Economic Development Alliance met to discuss this, and I gave the same presentation to that board. At the end of that meeting, they voted to submit a letter of intent to ESD saying that they intend to apply. That was kind of the first step in our timeline to get to actually applying for this grant. Tonight, I'm here to present to you, kind of answer any questions I can or write down any questions that I can take with me about the grant. I'll be doing the same thing at the village next Thursday, with our goal of, at March 20th town board meeting and March 27th village board meeting, passing resolutions that essentially serve as a precursor to a development agreement for the grant. And then ultimately our goal is to apply for the grant by April 1st. So the biggest catch is that FAST New York is not just an acronym. It really does move fast. And if we want to capitalize on this opportunity, the goal is to demonstrate commitment by moving swiftly. So that's all I have to present tonight, but I'm happy to open the floor if any of you have any questions.
So for the public knowledge, it's me.
Hi.
Sorry, I know I got a poll right there. So who will be the grant writer? Are you guys or WIDA?
Yeah, WIDA would be the applicant for the grant. Colliers, which is the firm that I work for, would be working to prepare that grant in coordination with the town, the village, ESD.
Okay, and then you got paid like with the 1%?
Say that again?
How do you get paid for this grant?
So the development agreement would establish all of that. It would outline the fee in order for Colliers to manage the grant and how much of that funding would be required. Essentially, town and village funds would go to WIDA in order to fund that, much the same way that the executive director position is currently funded.
Also to,
write the FAST New York grant would be covered by WIDA under our existing.
okay.
So,
But so let's say if the grant got denied, then did you guys do, that there is the wash?
Under our agreement with WIDA, so
Okay.
if it got denied, which is, you can never say with certainty,
You never know.
but PSD doesn't come proactively
Yeah.
to the table.
And Kimberly, you may want to go up with Leanne, because the people watching at home and who will watch on tape, they don't hear and see the people in the audience. So, thank you. But, it's interesting because we talked about this, when Colliers was brought on, and Leanne, how did you describe it? Because I think you undersold yourself. You said you're doing the what for WIDA right now, like the administrative?
Support staff?
Support staff. That's ridiculous. You are actually like the sitting executive director. And I can say that because I think what you've done since Matt Chatfield left has been executive director-esque. It's not support staff. But WIDA, what we were paying our executive director, and most of the funding from WIDA, which comes from the town, the village, the school district. 90% of the budget annually was to the executive director's W-2 pay. We've switched that W-2 pay for the time being to be the billable hours of our acting executive director. So we think that what time commitment of applying for the grant, filling out the Fast New York paperwork between now and April 1st, would most likely fall under the scope of what WIDA was already paying. That's what we described to WIDA this morning. They agreed. Now, once we get beyond April 1st, and let's do the positive thing, Kimberly. Remember, we didn't ask for this grant. They came to us. I was born at night, but not last night. That gives me a lot of confidence that I think we got a good chance of getting approved for this. They came to us. Then those devil in the details of the development agreement, we talked about this at the WIDA board meeting this morning. The town, Paul Adams is our finance director, and other staff that we have, Maria Dewar, this and that, we are structured to be able to manage grants better than the villages. And that's not a disparaging comment on the village. We have the infrastructure and the people to do that. So we might be doing a development agreement with WIDA that says we really don't need much from WIDA to manage that. We can do our portion in-house. And if you've read the numbers here, the $9.3 million, through these estimates, $5.5 million is the towns and $3.8 million is the village, when you look at the roads that will ultimately end up being each of those municipalities. So our development agreement, what we end up doing between the town and WIDA, we may do that all in-house and not pay WIDA. I don't know. I would guess that the village will be paying WIDA because they just don't have the staff to do that. But we also have to vet through ESD that, well, we want to make sure that they're okay with the development agreement because they specifically said WIDA should apply for this grant. And there's a reason why they said that. So if we go and get cute on development agreements and basically neuter WIDA, like, now that they've gotten the grant, we don't need them anymore, I don't think the state regulators would like that. So we have to proceed cautiously. What are we at, 48 hours here, right? And they were with us for 1 hour because they had to get back to Albany. We had about 30 questions, didn't we, Leanne?
Yes, and more.
Yeah.
A growing list.
So we're bookending today because at 7:30 this morning, the WIDA board had a lot of these same questions, and we said, look, get it. There's things we can't answer. It's a fluid process. We hopefully will get those answers. The letter of intent this morning was somewhat sleeves from the vest from the WIDA board, because if the rest of the sequence of events, which are resolutions on the 20th by this board and resolution by the village board on the 27th, if those don't come to fruition, this is all for naught, and there is no application made on April 1st. So WIDA had no problems doing the letter of intent. Now, it's interesting because I sent to the town board on Tuesday the verbiage, the wording, the lexicon, I'll call it, that ESD used for us, which, Leanne, I think you would agree, we both looked at each other and said, what does that mean? The precursor to a development agreement. I'd never heard of that before. We looked at ESD and we said, hey, now you guys have an LOI template. That's great. That'll help Leanne put an LOI together, a letter of intent for WIDA. That's wonderful. There's the template. We looked at it. Leanne and I and the WIDA board tinkered with it. Great. What's your template look like for a precursor for a development agreement? Don't have one. Do you have some precedent ones? No. This reminded me so much of what we experienced about a year ago with getting the $20 million from ESD for the sewer plant. It was not your traditional rules of grants. This is Fast New York, and I saw it back in March of 2023 when we applied. Matt Chatfield did it for us, for a Fast New York grant for Fairlife. And about 5 days after we applied for it, they said, I'm really sorry, we're not going to get you that Fast New York grant, because we decided to switch on a day's notice and give that Fast New York grant to RG&E for $20 million because they need it more to get the power to the Fairlife campus. I guess the point of my story is, this type of grant is really flexible, and they move and they shake and they do things quick. Our plan is, after tonight, to get with Kyle, Don White, those are the village and town attorneys, the mayor, myself, Paul Adams, the finance director, and Danielle, I can't remember her last name, who's the village treasurer or whatever, and Leanne. And we're gonna get together early next week and start drafting this precursor to a development agreement. Because we're gonna come back in 2 weeks and ask the town board to do a resolution to approve that precursor. We've asked ESD, you're gonna need to guide us on this. What do you need in that thing? We appreciate you're not asking us to do a bond resolution. You're not asking us to do seeker. You're not asking us to do the traditional things that you need to do to apply for a grant. We're fast-tracking this, no pun intended. But they want some meat on the bone in this precursor of a development agreement that they can get and say, the village and the town are both, the boards have made commitments through this resolution that they are going to, if we award them this $9.3 million, they're gonna move forward on this. And ESD is very nervous about that because ESD awarded a $1.8 million grant to the village back in 2019 on a 50% match for the roads. And they made it very clear to us when we were in that meeting the other day that it's not good that 6 years have gone by and that grant has not been used. So if we do this, they're gonna wanna make sure that we are in for a penny and we're in for a pound. And that leads me to that dollar thing. The 1% commitment fee. For us, the town, that'd be $55,000. What we gotta vet is the grant covers what type of soft costs. I can't imagine the grant's gonna cover our 1% fee. Well, does the $500,000 HUD grant that we already had MOUs and MIAs with the village about sharing grant money, can we have that cover some of it? We don't know. 48 hours. The $250 application fee, that's not anything I'm gonna be worried about. WIDA probably can handle that in their budget. The WIDA administering of the grant, let's step back first. These are what you said would be the cost. The application for the grant, okay? 20 hours, let's say it's 3,000 to 4,000 of billable hours to Colliers. That's gonna be covered under our normal contract with WIDA and Colliers. The executive director position for the next month will probably be focused on this. So it's not gonna cost the town or village anything more. Now we get into April, I think they'll award or tell us within 30 days if we got it. Hopefully in parallel, we can start working on the development agreement and asking ESD how much of this can be done by the town and not through WIDA. And if it can, well then that's where we'll start putting meat on the bone of how long this is gonna take. What is this asking for? And I'm gonna tell you this right now, and Paul, I'm glad you're here. $118,000 grant, 2016 for Sandbar Park design. Have we gotten that money yet, all of it?
I believe now we haven't gotten all that.
Did we just get it in the last couple months?
5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Years.
Years.
WIA, Phase 1 sewer plant, $3 million, 2017. How long did it take us to get all of it?
Well, it took us, actually took us about 3 years to get that. We
Oh,
just
that's
got
not
the
too
last
bad.
piece. But we got most of it in the first year.
Is getting, comprehensive plan, $100,000 grant, 2-year delay. Grants are not, it's golden rule. They got the gold, you play by the rules, and a lot of times getting the grant money it's reimbursement, okay? You gotta spend the money and then get the reimbursement back. And this one works that way. But when we asked him, Leanne, you were there, I said, well, that's our experience on WIA grants and, smart growth grants. But then on the other end of the spectrum, we had an experience where the governor got up on the podium on April 18th and said, we're gonna give $20 million to the town. April 18th, said it on the podium. When did we get all the money on that 20 million?
We got that money within 8 months.
Yeah, 8 months, got all
Broke the
20
record.
million. And ESD, and I don't wanna put words in their mouth, I said, how does this Fast New York work? Closer to the WIA grant where it's a baton death march to get the money, or closer to the 20 million from the ESD on the sewer? And they really intimated, it's closer to the one on the sewer. I'm getting into details, I apologize. they used a term I'd never heard before, but Elena Bernardi, who is the bid president at CPA, said, oh yeah, I've heard of it, and maybe you have, Paul. An impressed account?
Yeah.
You've heard of that? Mm-hmm. Oh, good, all right. Apparently, they set it up that way. So you get $5.5 million to the town, right?
Right.
We go out, we start designing Bolter Parkway, we start spending money on design, this and that. We get the invoices, percentage of completion, we submit them in, and they reimburse us. It's a reimbursement grant. They were very honest with us that, you know, sometimes to do this, you have to do a one-year ban, interest only, bond anticipation note. Let's say you take one out for $4 million, but since it's a 1 year and it's got interest, as you get reimbursements, sometimes those are set up where you can do the principal payment right then and bring it down.
Correct.
So you never go into a 30-year bond. You would, but either we're gonna have to fund this up front from our fund balance, or we're gonna have to go and do bond anticipation notes. Either way you look at it, if we do this, it's not like they're handing us $5.5 million and we go do it. They didn't hand us $20 million on the sewer thing. We had to show them we had spent that $20 million. Sent them the invoices, proof that we had spent it, and they reimbursed it. That's how this is gonna work. A lot of devil in the details, a lot of questions that need to be answered. I'm really looking forward to hopefully, Kyle, on Monday, but I might build it around Tuesday, because that's your office hours, to get Don White, the mayor, Danielle, and Paul. We need to sit down immediately, like I said this morning, and start working on that preface or prelude or precursor to the development agreement, and get the people from ESD to counsel us on whether it's the three bears. Is this too little? Is this too much? Are we throwing everything in the about the kitchen sink in there? Or is it just right? And I can't stress this enough. They're not asking us to do bond resolutions. They're not asking to do the traditional things in a grant. But they want us to put together a document that I've never heard of, a precursor to a development agreement, that will have enough oomph with a resolution from the two boards that they can take that grant application with that resolution and say, we're gonna award that. So you asked if they had questions, I just went on a monologue. Sorry about that.
I'm sure that brought up a lot more questions.
Hope it does.
So you said you had a lot of questions to ask also. As you receive these answers to the people that you're gonna ask those questions to, would it make sense to come to a workshop prior to our next board meeting where we're gonna discuss and probably vote on a resolution just to update us?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We can
Okay.
certainly do that at any point over the next few weeks. Yeah.
Thanks.
What's the downside? There was a lot you said there. Like, what is the, it doesn't feel like there's a lot of downside to this, but
Right.
what may be the downside to this? Like, what might that be?
Honestly, I'm struggling to see one. I think the biggest catch here is that this is gonna move faster than anyone probably was anticipating that these roads were going to be done. I don't think that's a bad thing by any means, but I don't think any of us 48 hours ago were planning on this, so,
Can I, and I'm glad Pat Stevens is in the room. I'll be the buzzkill now.
go ahead.
You know what the downside of this is? Having a road, Chiota Extension, and having Bolter Parkway Extension town roads, that's a white elephant. That's a liability, isn't it, Pat? That we have to maintain and plow and redo. That's what a road is.
These are currently, most of these roads are Xerox
The
complex
two that
roads.
we're paying, that
Yeah.
we're getting, they aren't roads there.
Well, in the full scope.
That's the village's concern. When you look at this breakdown, John, if you look at the ones that the Bolter Parkway Extension, that's the town. There is no road there right now.
Right.
Mitchell Dean, that's gonna become a village road. The village will have to plow and maintain a mile swath of road.
Yeah.
The sanitary conveyance pipe we've already done. Phillips Road, that's village. Chiota Drive Extension, there's nothing there right now. It's grass. So that's the downside, if you wanna say. Now, in a vacuum, there's the downside. when you get the connectivity and you get those roads on the Xerox campus in the public purview, the opportunity that opens up for that campus to be sold off and have economic development over there, where right now there's empty buildings and Xerox has been in a 30-year decline. I think we all know that is, I called it this morning, I think, Leanne, the roads are the skeleton. The power at RG&E, which we're working on, is the lungs and the heart and the organs. And until you get those done, Xerox really can't sell off 80-acre parcels to, private development who's gonna build whatever they're gonna build, which Matt Chatfield, and I somewhat agree with him, when Micron gets built, we're 70 miles down the thruway or down whatever, in what is it called, the whatever quarter, the chip quarter,
I can't remember. I know what you're
can't
talking
either.
about, though. Yes.
But it's just a natural. This is the largest industrial campus around that's in that. It's a natural. I hate to say, if you build it, they will come, and that's why Xerox and RG&E, and we've been working, trying to get 50 more megawatts onto the campus, because you gotta have that, that's the hearts and lungs. We just, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, got a chance to put the skeleton together, which is amazing. So,
What about Xerox? Does Xerox have to have a role in this? Does Xerox just have to dedicate the road or
Yeah.
give us a road?
Xerox, and Leanne, if you don't, I mean, this came up a lot this morning. What if Xerox doesn't?
They say
Xerox
no.
in the town and the village executed in April of '24, 11 months ago, a three-party agreement that basically, that's the agreement. We now have the funding. We will go to the terms of that agreement, that this board voted on that agreement, to have me sign it. Most of that agreement, if it's 6 pages, Kyle, I would imagine that only about a third of a page has anything to do with the town, because it's Bolter Parkway Extension. Everything else is village roads, Panama, Orchard, Mitchell Dean, Phillips Road, multimodal. It's all village. That agreement was sequential, where basically Xerox said, hey, if you do this, village, and you do this, and you do this, and you do this, the last thing that'll happen is that we'll give the town 4 acres on our campus to build Bolter Parkway Extension through. And I knew when we signed that agreement, I said, I'll probably be dead by the time that agreement has all of those sequences happen because of the funding gaps. I hope I don't die in the next year, because they just gave the funding gap. I have no idea why ESD approached us about this to plug this hole, but it is something. I mean, apparently the governor and the state is really seeing that there is something to invest in. And you'd say, well, they're doing this for Coke Fairlife, but they didn't include the roads that Coke Fairlife has to fix, Pat. Tibor, Basket, turning lanes, 104. That's not included in this. And Coke Fairlife has to do that per the seeker from 15, 18 months ago. That's their responsibility. Their dime, their work. This has nothing to do with that. So I don't know. I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall of the government, state, ESD, of why they came to us with this. Because it's something.
Thank you very much.
It brings together a great opportunity and years of work, that's for sure.
Look forward to your update in a couple weeks.
Sounds great.
Well, you'll get updates way before then, because when we walk in here on the 20th, it's very possible, I mean, on the time constraint of this, we need to have the board ready to either vote yes or vote no on that precursor. So, I know I've sent to the board at least one email on this on Tuesday that laid out the Gantt chart, Gantt chart, yeah, that of the things that have to happen. And the first 2 action items were happening today.
Yes.
WIDA's letter of intent, shoehorning in this presentation and Q&A. Then it said that the next 13 days would be the village and town and Leanne and Weta working on the framework of that precursor to the development agreement so that we can roll in here on the 20th and vote on that resolution. So there's gonna have to be a way to feed this board that information and not show up in 2 weeks with, well, here's the update. That puts this board in a terrible position on a time constraint thing that needs to be voted on. There will have to be updates to you on what we're finding out. And the board, I'm imploring the board to be involved in this process over the next 2 weeks. You really need to be, so you can show up here in 2 weeks, educated, having asked the right question, getting feedback from us. Because I think it would be, hey, look, if we find out some things that, you know, oh, there's also $1 million you gotta spend, exaggerate to make a point. Well, that's not what you sold us, so, you know. But if it's the way it looks, I think it's imperative that this board be in a position where they can vote positively on that precursor to the development agreement, that term that I've never heard, in 2 weeks from tonight, so.
And to your point, Tom, I'm sure we will receive periodic email updates. But I still think it's important for the residents of the town of Webster to perhaps have a second workshop to update our residents as to the current status and any questions that you had, provide those answers. That's just a suggestion. I mean, Tom, you put the schedule together, it's up to you.
I mean, you can, as far as I'm concerned, Jenny, John, and even though I don't think Patty's gonna be here, but Patty has already called me, texted me, emailed me on the email I sent out Tuesday night. So I was very glad to see that even though Patty Cataldi, our deputy supervisor, probably is not going to be a voting member of this on the 20th, she's asking a lot of questions, she's inquiring about this. And I can appreciate, since that email went out late on Tuesday, you have a full-time job, you have a full-time, you all have full-time jobs, all right? So it might not have resonated and read it and said, wow, what is going on here? I think after tonight's presentation and this, you're like, oh, okay, so you'll probably be more apt as we start to send you stuff over the next 2 weeks to be like, yeah, I need to look at this. Maybe I need to look at that again and start pelting Leanne and
Yes.
Tom with questions. Love it.
Yep.
I would love 1,000 questions that we can then go to ESD or try to figure out so that we can walk in here on the 20th. I want the answers. So,
Well, thank you for your presentation, and I would definitely look into it and do some more research, because I know, you know, Governor Hochul have sent out a lot of information, and I attended one of her meetings this morning, and I know there's a lot of grants that is out there, and, you know, they try to encourage and try to, you know, help the community, hopefully that we can get some grants for these projects that we are doing. I thank you for your time.
we're gonna get you out of here. Thank you, Leanne and Kimberly.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Thanks.
And that concludes our board meeting tonight. Have a good night, everybody.